I haven't covered his trial at all because I don't care. Let's see what happened. People are mad.
This is monumental, Elizabeth. We've been covering this case for 2 months, really for more than a year at this point in time. We are seeing about the actual verdict here. And just for the I want to understand, count 1 was the most serious charge, carrying up to a life sentence. He has been found not guilty of racketeering conspiracy RICO. Not guilty. He has also been found not guilty of trafficking of Cassandra Ventura. She testified for days. We're also learning that he's been found guilty of the transportation to engage in prostitution count involving Cassie Ventura. He has been found not guilty of sex trafficking of Jane, who is the girlfriend that he was dating as well, and guilty of the transportation to engage in now.
So it seems like they got him guilty on some of the minor charges, no pun intended, but not on the big trafficking ones. My understanding is that the evidence against him was overwhelming, which does kind of which I think gives the impression this is like another well-connected, wealthy Hollywood people just get away with a lot of bad shit, you know, like just the same as like this. The same thing always happens. It happened with OJ. It happened to a large extent, right, with Weinstein, you know, but isn't he's still going to jail for a while. He's still being convicted on felony charges.
Elizabeth, this is very, very significant. We had an inkling yesterday when there was a hung jury on the...
They're also likely to let him post bond and just get out free. I don't think he's being given bond. Somebody in chat just said that he literally was just denied bond.
RICO charge, the most serious, that there might be an actual acquittal there or a hung jury. The prosecution insisted on having it keep going. The defense wanted it to keep going. And now we know they have a result. It is...
Yeah, denied bail. What the f is this? Court sketch shows Sean Diddy Combs reacting after verdicts are read in New York on Wednesday. He crawled under the table and he took a nap on the chair? On the stinky courtroom butt chair? He freaky. Yeah, that's true. He's popping it out a little bit. So he has been denied. Oh wait, bail decision. Cleared of sex trafficking and racketeering charges that could have behind bars for life, but found guilty of lesser prostitution-related offenses. The verdict is a blow to prosecutors who said the music mogul used violence and fear to abuse women, and overall a win for the disgraced star. Outside the federal courthouse in Lower Manhattan, dozens of Combs' supporters gathered after the verdict was delivered. Many chanted his name and cheered as several members of his family exited the building following the announcement. Let Puffy go, some supporters chanted, putting their fists in the air. Not guilty, others shouted. Music filled the air as supporters played Diddy Free, a track released by King Combs and Kanye West, who briefly came to support Combs in court during the trial. That's great. The crowd outside the courthouse danced and celebrated, with some handing out bottles of baby oil and lathering themselves in it. RICO is not a RICO. All right. Interesting stuff. Really fascinating stuff there. Thank you.
Is a not guilty verdict. Talk to me more broadly here, because the Prostitution Acts, people thought it was kind of a low-hanging fruit. He was found guilty of those, but not trafficking of Cassie.
This is the best possible outcome for the defense. This is what, of course they wanted a full acquittal, but if you're not getting a full acquittal, this is what they wanted. Their client is now not facing life in prison. He is facing 2 separate charges that he was convicted on. Serious charges. They each carry a maximum of 10 years. So this isn't nothing that we are talking about, but the most serious charges he has been acquitted on. As Laura said, days of testimony from Cassie Ventura, from Jane, Cassie being on the stand for 4 days, Jane being on the stand for 6 days, these women crying, breaking down on the stand. Well, guess what? The jury did not believe most of their story, or even if they believed most of their story, it did not line up with the...
I think over-policing in black communities has created an environment where the counter-reaction can mean dismissing victims because you assume any black man's being unfairly convicted. I'm gonna lose brother points for this one, but yeah, 100%. You saw the same thing with OJ too. Like, there are black people who will reflexively defend any other black person convicted or accused of any charges. But I don't think that explains the jury's behavior, you know? I think that more explains kind of like a broader discussion, you know? You saw with Eric Adams. Well, yeah, you did. Yeah, you did, for sure. And Eric Adams still takes advantage of it, disinvited to the cookout. Do we know the makeup of the jury? I'm not insinuating that the jury was biased by their race. I don't know that. I have no evidence to support that. I'm talking about broader, like, discourse, broader community reaction. I have no idea why the jury ruled why they did. It was mostly male jurors. Of course, women can understand this stuff.
Those charges. So,
and by the way, on that point, let's talk a little bit about that, because there was an inkling for those people who had been in the courtroom, including ourselves, who had been watching the testimony. Remember what they were using as the defense to counter the trafficking. It was free will. They were talking about free will, and they were suggesting, while the prosecution said any bait and switch or manipulation to coerce these women by fraud or threat or otherwise to engage in these so-called freak-offs, that force, that cloud of force and threat and violence that had hung over the head of Cassie Ventura was enough to suggest that she never could develop the free will to say no. And when it came to Jane, the idea of manipulating her to travel to places like New York under the pretenses of quality time and shopping, only to then engage in freak-offs, was enough of manipulation. Well, the defense, was very clear. They kept saying free will. These are grown women making grown-up decisions who have an interest in engaging in this behavior. It seems that the jurors, maybe looking at text messages or testimony, agree.
By the way, to be clear, I just want to be clear really quick, because I don't want to be misconstrued, okay? White people also reflexively defend white people. I think there might be a greater proportional bias in the black community towards in-group defense relative to how progressive they are in their voting tendencies. Like for instance, white people tend to vote for white presidential candidates, but black people overwhelmingly voted for Obama or Kamala Harris. Though there are other underlying biases there. There's like a sort of like a underlying motivating factors to that. Math is complicated. What's most important is that you not be racist.
With that sentiment.
Absolutely, and we were just talking about some of those text messages that came in, and let's dig into them a little bit deeper. As I said, nothing about this is black and white. I have covered many high-profile sex crimes cases with famous defendants, and the concept of consent can be very hard for a jury to understand, especially when
that's especially a male jury.
You have text messages that say, I want to do this freak off. Now, again, these women on the stand said that they texted those things to simply placate Sean Combs because they were scared of him. Because especially in Cassie Ventura's case, remember, this is a woman who was physically beaten. Our team got that on video, and the jury saw that numerous times.
By the way, the jury is leaving the courtroom right now. Their job is done now. Civic duty done. They have been there for 7 weeks, and they just left the courtroom.
This is, I mean, really, it is a stunning turn of events. It's a quick deliberation. I mean, a quick turn of events from yesterday when they were deadlocked. But also remember, this is the beginning of day 3. This jury reached a verdict in under 15 hours after hearing 2 months of testimony. So really a stunning outcome. Again,
in my eyes, the court here is upholding culture. Yeah, I didn't follow the proceedings very much at all, but my understanding is that the evidence against Diddy here was pretty compelling, pretty goddamn compelling. And for the lesser charges to be affirmed, but the big ones to be for him to be acquitted on, suggests to me, I don't know. I can't really comment on that.
Would anticipate that the defense is quite happy right now, but Sean Combs will still be serving prison time.
Yes.
These are still 2 charges that each carry 10 years. Now, Laura, I actually want to hear, as a former federal prosecutor, how much time, and you may not want to make this prediction, but how much of that time do you anticipate that he would serve? What do you think that the judge may sentence him at with each of these charges carrying 10 years each?
A great question. First, let me just dab the sweat off my brow, because let me tell you something. I was sprinting from the court trying to get here for this moment because I was so eager to understand what the actual verdict would be that I'm literally doing an affair to remember sprint through the streets of Manhattan trying to get here. And on the way, people were asking, is there a verdict? Through the streets of Manhattan. That's how people have been viewing this particular case. And here's the thing. After almost 8 weeks, The SDNY has a success rate of conviction of over 90%. It's actually over, I think, 95%. So think, the resources that are being used in this case, more than what? It was 6 prosecutors, including...
It really does suck that the Me Too movement, like, completely failed, unfortunately. Like, it was already illegal, but the effort was to normalize a culture of believing victims, which unfortunately just did not happen. Like, right-wing media dogpiled, and the issue got kind of dropped. And now, like, our current sitting president lost a civil case about sexual assault and then immediately went to run the presidency. So, yeah. Yeah, there's been a backlash. Now, you know, you have more guys than ever, despite the fact that false accusations are incredibly rare relative to... You've got a bunch of guys who are like, yeah, you got to be careful with a female, because, like, if you have sex and later she regrets it, she could accuse you of her. Shit doesn't happen. I mean, it can happen, but it doesn't happen any more than other false accusation crimes, like false accusations of murder or battery. It can happen. It's just like anything can happen, pussy. I don't know. Come on. Cons are with Diddy, Eliza Lee. Cons are pro ideologically.
Maureen Comey, a top prosecutor in the SDNY who handled Ghislaine Maxwell and other infamous cases as well. For almost 8 weeks, the devotion of resources and time and energy and cost resulting in prostitution-related charges. Now, that might be a black eye if people are thinking about the rate of conviction, but they believed in their case, and now they'll go forward knowing that the jury, who they must respect, has found only this one. But here's the thing, 10 years is possible, but for a first-time offender of any crime like this, it could be...
If you accuse someone of rape and are lying, you should get prison time that your would have gotten. Dog, quit letting your fear of women get pressed on you by people on the internet, okay? This is not a real problem. This is like 12-year-old posting, okay? This shit goes hard in the playground. Is like really f***ing common. You really want it, so how do you determine if a accusation's false? Like if they fail to convict, and then the woman who was gets 30 years or whatever? No, I don't think so. If it's found that you've lied in a police report, which is what a false accusation is, that's already a crime. You can already go to jail for that. It's you have to proportion your response to this stuff in relation to the evidence of the problem. Like, are sharks scary? Yes. How much money should we dedicate to preventing shark attacks? Probably not that much, because they don't happen that often. It happens, statistically speaking, since I've started this sentence, someone watching is, okay? Shit is so common. If you talk to women, I know tough for many of you, but one day you'll get there, a lot of them have stories. Them or a friend, someone they're close to, maybe like an almost incident. Shit's really common. Really, 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 really common. False rape accusations? Oh yeah, I've heard a few stories on the internet. I'm just saying, like, you gotta proportion your response to this shit line the problem. It's a serious problem. I know some people might get mad at me for this one, but I mean it is bad. You gotta... I think a lot of guys don't get this because women don't talk about it, because women are kind of educated not to trust guys with this information, which is fair, because a lot of guys will... Like, a woman will tell a guy a story of her being when she was 16, and the guy will think for a second and say, well, was his dick bigger than mine? Like, it's... A lot of guys are psychopaths on the topic, so women don't talk about it, and then you get the problem, you know?
As little as 2 years in prison as well. Now, they could run consecutively, meaning back to back as opposed to concurrently, but that is something that we're not talking about the maximum per se, and this judge will have discretion. Here's what will happen now. He will set a sentencing date. He will have a probation report that is coming up, and over this probation report, he is going to essentially figure out issues of remorse and recidivism, which is a fancy way of saying, will they commit the crime again? He'll look at the different factors that are in play for sentencing guidelines. This is federal court, and he will draw a conclusion on that. He will not walk out a free man today at all, but he knows...
I don't understand why the huge prevalence of rape mean we should actively ignore the problem of false accusations. Are you high? What do you mean, who's ignoring it? It's illegal. If you're found to have falsified a police report, that's a crime. What do you mean ignore? I don't understand. I'm ignoring the shark attack problem. You're definitely brushing it off? Yeah. Like I'm brushing the shark attack thing off. It's not as common. But you know what I hear? You know what is common? Guys whining about false accusations that have never happened to them. That's the difference. You talk to a woman about rape, she has a story. You talk to a guy about false accusations, he's heard a story, you know? Which, oh, you're ignoring the problem. Well, no, if it happens that woman's a piece of shit, it's a crime, she should go to jail. She lied in a police report. She tried to, she criminally misrepresented a scenario in an attempt to hurt a guy and get him sent to jail. I mean, good luck with that, considering how infrequently rapes are prosecuted to conviction, but, you know, whatever.
Right now, the possibility of life without the rest of his life is no longer on the table. Prostitution, though, is. And I have to say, I'm a little surprised.
You can't just say you don't have a story, you heard of a story, bro, I have a story. I can say that because I talk more about, like, statistical realities than the experiences of the individual chatters who I don't know. But if you have a story and someone falsely accused you of, then that's bad. And, you know, if she falsified a police report, I'm assuming she, because I'm misogynist, then that's a criminal offense. I don't know, like, I don't know what position you want me to take on this. It's like talking about anti-white racism. Shit happens, yeah, but you got to get a little bit suspect when you hear more. Oh, but I have a story. I was discriminated against by a black person. Okay, I'm sure I have been too. Me in Los Angeles getting on the bus, and the cool black driver is like, hey, what's up, man? To the two black kids in front of me, but then I step on, he's like, why don't I get a hey, what's up, man? No one suffers as you suffer. I know. I think the chatter is saying the punishment for falsifying a police report doesn't address the reputational harm. Well, sure, but nothing could. To which I say sue for defamation. Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if you think you have a case there, that seems valid. But also, like, let's not pretend life is easy for women who file accusations. Right? Like, that's not... This is like Leah Thomas' transition to own the women in the swimming or whatever. Like, you're disrupting your life quite a bit by filing a charge, by going to the police and the tests and the inquiry and the so on, the kit, and then they never test the thing. You know, it's a whole thing. So I'm just saying, like, let's not treat it with flippancy, okay? That's all. I'm just saying we shouldn't treat it with flippancy. Or maybe only make accusations if it's serious and not, oh, well, I regret it. Dude, what the f***? Hunter Biden nudes? How can you watch me for so long and be like a massive retard? Shouldn't some of me rubbed off on you? That shit ain't happening, dog. Women are not and then going, I didn't enjoy that. I'm going to now spend the next 2 years of my life dealing with lawyers and police while I accuse somebody with no evidence of me, therefore turning it into a back and forth where we'll both get cross-examined by lawyers and I'll have to perform and cry, but it's all worth it because I regretted the sex. Are you insane? Jesus Christ. Take 30 days to reflect. That should be a perm. Surely it has happened, even if it's not common. Everything has happened. There are people who have been killed because their pet walked across the trigger of a loaded gun and fired it accidentally. There have been people who have died to lightning strike. Why aren't we talking about reality? I go for like a few months without doing anything or saying anything explicitly feminist, and everyone goes crazy, man. Why are people so terrified of women? They're like literally weak. Most of them. It's just not that common. It's statistically not any more common, false accusations, than false accusations of other crimes. If a person falsely accuses you of a crime and you're charged and you have to go through court proceedings, that's awful. And I hope that you succeed in proving that woman a liar, and then you sue the shit out of her for defamation and countersue and da-da-da. Well, infinite retribution, okay? Scorched earth, jihad, I don't care. Whatever. I've never even insinuated otherwise. Let's just not pretend that there's a real epidemic of women regretting sex. Do you have any idea how many times I've heard about a woman who accuses a man of rape because she regretted sex? Never from people who I know, because it happened to them, but always like the abstract. Like it could happen. What if it did happen? Like, Jesus. Considering, yeah, how underreported actual already is. Let's not like, let's not produce a culture of like disbelieving women this much, you know? Like, it's not good. I do think rape is bad. Many people have criticized me for this position. We need a Me 3. That's fucking facts. Well, that's for a jury to decide, Jazz Dog. The truth is, and this has been my experience, okay? Because I'm a human who lives in the real world, and I base my understanding of the world off of my experiences with it and the information I have on it, not like anecdotes online. A lot of people, especially a lot of men, have a shockingly bad understanding of consent. Like a significant number of people, young or old, mostly men, have no idea what consent is. And there's a million versions of this. There's if you pressure her relentlessly and she eventually says yes, that's consent. There's like the Dennis method or whatever, you know, because of the implication. There's people who think that if you're drunk, as long as you're capable of like nodding, that's consent. Like there are so many, and then there's a bunch of other stuff too. Like there are guys who will make out with a chick at a party, and when the girl's sober, and the girl's like, yeah, we should later. And then later the girl's plastered and the guy's like, well, time to cash in on that promise, and her because he thinks, well, she consented while she was sober, but she's barely like conscious now or whatever. There are so many versions of this, and so many women who never report their rapes, who never even like don't even want to think about it as rape because of all that implies and because they think it soils them and yada yada, right? So in this environment, we cannot go being giant pussy retards by unironically espousing shit like, well, what if they accuse you of falsely because they regret it? If you are saddled, if a person tells me they have a false accusation, it is statistically true that it is more likely that he raped her and just doesn't know it, and she's accusing him credibly of rape, but he doesn't know what it is. Like, rape is so common that if a person claims false accusation, it's overwhelmingly more likely that that's what's going on. That being said, in individual cases, you have to proportion your beliefs to the available evidence. So if I knew someone, I never have, but if I knew someone had said they'd been falsely accused, I'd be like, damn. So I guess it's kind of a he said, she said. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'll hear both sides of the story, but I don't know. I don't know if I'm ever going to like figure it out. You have to kind of like work out the details and the implications, I guess. It's just a rough dynamic. Just don't be too much. Just don't be a freak about it. You know? Hit him with a that's crazy. Well, that should be done in all cases, yeah.
It came down to the documents, and I think that was obviously incredibly effective for the jury because, again, when they are seeing flight records that show said worker went from Atlanta to New York, that's pretty clear cut and dry that you were traveling across state lines. So it did come down to that evidence, to the documents, because you are right, Laura, not only did they not call any male workers who traveled across state lines, but also none of these workers called themselves prostitutes. So that is you bring up a really, really good point that these male escorts on the stand, they were not saying, yes, now in hindsight I realize that I was paid as a prostitute. So that wasn't cut and dry, but that documentation, the bank statements, the hotel.
That's gotta suck. Imagine if you think you're getting paid to attend a party because you're like that cool, and then you go there and Diddy's oiling himself up. That's gotta suck. That's assault in and of itself. It's a kind of
Hotel records and also the flight records clearly is what compelled the jury to convict him on those two charges.
I think we're hearing something right now that they're asking for Sean Combs to be released pending the sentencing. I believe you're saying he wants to go back to his home in Miami, which of course was the subject of a lot of discussion. He lives on 1- and 2-star island. Talk about the level of wealth we're talking about here. He will not have access to a plane or the ability to travel, we're being told in my ear right now. And so they're making that request. Now, it is not unheard of for somebody to be released pending sentencing, particularly if they're not sentenced on the far more serious of charges. And remember, part of the consideration for any judge deciding whether somebody will be released and until sentencing is their threat to the community. Do they pose a risk to the community? Do they pose a safety threat to themselves or others? Now, for him to be held on prostitution would suggest that prostitution or transportation as such would be enough to hold. I'm not familiar with that happening.
I wonder what the logic of doing this was anyway. Like, if you're a famous pop star, are you really having issues picking up women? No, but that's the thing, right? Is about power, right? Like, why do you think all the billionaire or whether they're all going to Epstein? You know, it's not like It's not like, you know, Alan Dershowitz or Trump or whatever, like the only place they can get laid is Little St. James. It's specifically about like the power dynamic. And I think that people who are very wealthy and powerful are probably more likely to have the kind of mind where they would enjoy something like that. You know, which is bad, again, to make a clear moral denunciation. Yeah, Trump explicitly described that he enjoyed women who were the wives of other people he knew in business because he liked cucking them. Like, then it's not about sex, it's about the power. Like, you're literally saying that you're having sex with the woman not because you're enjoying the woman, but because you like feeling like you're better than the man, like you have power over the man. Which, in addition to being gay, is also, I think, an element of how, you know, not about sex it is. Well, Andrew Tate phenomenon. Yeah, like Tate very clearly doesn't enjoy sex. He's said he essentially doesn't derive enjoyment from sex. He just likes that it makes him feel like a man.
With a lot of different people, so the judge could take into consideration, well, the jury has found they do not pose a threat in this moment in time. They want to set aside or put some conditions of release. It could be an ankle monitor, it could be otherwise, but again, the risk of flight, the posing of a threat to the community, all things that the judge will consider. Can you imagine?
And Laura, I want to read to you the exact quote that comes from our Nikki Brown, who is in that courthouse. This is what Mark Agnifilo, who is Combs' defense attorney, said, quote, "He has been acquitted of very, very serious charges. He has been convicted of a far less serious charge." The judge asking, as Laura...
Maybe a follow-up video from after the denying bail. Oh, yes, they do. Posted 3 minutes ago.
We are back with our breaking news. The judge in the Sean Diddy Combs trial has just rather shockingly denied him bail. This, of course, coming after the news that the jury convicted him of 2 of the lesser charges in the government's case against him, finding him not guilty of the 3 biggest and most consequential charges. Do we have Elizabeth Wagmeister yet? Okay, so let's get straight to CNN's Elizabeth Wagmeister, who's outside the court, along with Laura Coates. Laura, this is a surprising development. What are we learning? What are the judge's reasons for not letting him out?
Well, we are still learning all the reasons why the judge has denied bail to Sean Diddy Combs pending his sentencing. That can be an indication of a number of things. Remember, the prosecution is intending
massive flight risk, perhaps?
To ask for jail time in this matter. Each of those charges could provide 10 years in prison. The sentencing guidelines will obviously dictate to what extent that will be followed. Those are the maximum. It is the ceiling, not the floor. But given the number of offenses he has failed to have in the past and the corresponding ways in which you judge someone's category that they're in for the ultimate decision of sentencing, it could be far less than that. I will say, of course, that the judge, by making this statement, essentially is giving a bit of a heads up that perhaps jail time is in fact what he will actually hand down to Sean Diddy Combs when the sentencing does in fact occur. I will also say that this indicates that the judge believes that there were no conditions of release that could have been met that would have satisfied the court in terms of whatever pending threat there may have been to society or the witnesses or victims in this case that as alleged, and that the conditions of release, including a passport being removed, no access to a flight, living in places other than New York, all these things could have been a part of it. You have additional information as well in terms of the why.
You know, we don't have the why quite yet. We are waiting from our team inside the courtroom, but when you said that part of the reason why could be that the judge perhaps believes that Combs could be a threat to society or the other witnesses, it reminded me of a letter that Cassie Ventura's attorney submitted just hours ago opposing him being released on bail. Jake, I want to read you a quote from his letter. It says, quote, "Miss more of this
issues and problems and flaws and that these were terrible situations." But again, the defense was saying it was domestic violence. I think the judge could have gone the other way here because the jury did acquit him of the racketeering and the trafficking counts, which would involve alleged acts of violence. And the jury found that he wasn't guilty of any of that. He was just found guilty of transporting individuals across state lines to engage in Constitution. So what is his risk to the...
Are there people really rooting for Diddy? He is a very popular celebrity, you know?
And after nearly a 2-month trial with 34 deciding right now whether Combs will actually be released today, his defense arguing that since the music mogul was acquitted of the most serious crimes, he should be able to go home. Once court was adjourned, family members cheered today's verdict. Combs' son, Christian, telling ABC News how happy he is.
Hey, yo, we love y'all. We love everybody watching. So happy. Pop's coming home. God bless. God bless the whole world.
What was going through your head when the verdict was read? Happy.
Interesting. They don't seem too concerned about selling their side of the story to the press.
Joining me now, Irina Roy, just outside court, legal contributor Bernardo Villalona, and also senior entertainment reporter Kelly Carter. All right.
I want to see, is there like a video of like his fans outside the courthouse? Is this what they were referring to?
I heard allegedly it was 2 slip and falls in the Frico. Look, slide at your wrist. Slide at your own wrist.
So I had to ask you, did you come with a bottle of Astroglide and baby oil, or did you pick them up afterwards, or how did that take shape?
It was actually gifted to me.
Okay.
It was a gift that keeps on giving. Okay. Never even seen this thing.
Okay.
It's the first thing. Right. But when I touched it, I seen the power that it had.
Yeah.
Interesting.
He beat him! It doesn't matter. He beat him! He beat him! He kicked him! You can't handle the truth! You can't handle the truth!
It doesn't matter what you
What he's talking about. Is it a possibility that Cassie Ventura went through things like this horrific, horrible things that this man, you saw me, we can agree the videos were horrible, right? Is it possible that she did things that she wouldn't know to because she was so in love with this man? The answer is yes or no. Because I gotta tell you, man, I've done things for women that because I was so in love with them. All I want to do, hold on. All I want to do is put a smile on their face, yes. 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 You understand what I'm trying to say? At the end of the day, we all have self-goals. 911.
Interesting stuff. Well, that was of no value at all. I'm glad we got to talk about culture for a bit, though. And I got to be, like, performatively angry at chat. I mean, I guess I was angry at some of you specifically. But, you know, broader sort of communication, you know. It's an important topic, man. Chat actually handled it well, I feel. Yeah, it was mostly just a few people, I guess. People don't give a shit about culture. I think that a lot of people are resistant to talking about it because they're uncomfortable with the idea that they might have broached moral lines before, or that they might have had them broached by another person towards them. And they don't want to feel like a person who victimizes others or a victim because it would recontextualize those experiences. I think that communication, understanding what's going on in other people's heads and hearts is pretty difficult, like in the best of days. And sex is a subject where people have a lot of very strong pent-up feelings and also aren't very good at communicating themselves. You know, they're not very good at expressing what they want or what they're comfortable with. So I think that inevitably, as we, you know, grow up or have experiences or whatever, there will be times where in retrospect, I think even a responsible person will go, I could have done a bit better, like communicating there. You know, nothing egregious, but just general, like the way you would in any other scenario. Trying to communicate with people, you have an interaction, you tell the waitress at the restaurant chain, you also enjoy your food, and then you feel dumb after. Yeah, it's no one communicates perfectly in every scenario. You know, it's unavoidable. Eventually, you're going to reflect, but because the idea of like consent and they're they're built up. They're like matters of great import. So people don't want to reflect on their engagements with those things quite as much. And I think that makes them worse at it. It makes people worse at learning about those things, talking about those things. People might be willing to self-reflect so they don't tell the hostess at the airline gate to enjoy her flight when she's not getting on the flight. They don't want to do that in the future, but people don't really want to think like, how consensual was that encounter at like prom or whatever, you know? But unfortunately, like you have to do that because otherwise well, otherwise you could get a lot of people hurt, including yourself.